You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
All right, here we are again. Uh, yes and no. Theoretically, the Senate has a right to vote its power away. But yet, the Constitution is clear, very clear on how it is to work. I guess they're going to make the argument, if we were to get into federal court, that the impeachment hasn't taken place because the articles have not been transmitted. I don't believe that that was the intention of the framers. So if a citizen would sue the Senate, they could probably get rid of that rule in federal court. Because the Constitution says that the Senate has the power, and then the Senate is saying, no, the House has the power. It's not, that pause is not built in to the Constitution. It causes a degradation, a diminishment of the check and balance built into the House and Senate. So essentially, even an outside person, absent Lindsey Graham taking action, could sue the Senate saying that they're shirking their duty, their responsibility, they're handing over their power, and thus causing a disruption in how the impeachment process was designed within the U.S. Constitution. So again, the framers were very thoughtful, and they knew that something was needed to ensure that the process moved within check and balance, as well as within an appropriate decorum, that nobody in the House could sit there and do what Pelosi's doing, engaging in a political shenanigan in inappropriate decorum, acting as though she has constitutional basis because some rule exists within the Senate. And you'll find that a lot of times it goes unchallenged in most cases. However, there are Senate and House rules that are in no way acceptable based upon the U.S. Constitution. Same thing happens in the FBI, the CIA, USMS, DHS, NSA. They have all these rules that do not coincide with the reality of our government's design. However, articulation has become the art of contrick and defrauding. Therefore, everybody goes with the defraud and with the contrick and says, yes, it's constitutional because of fraudulent reasons. And that's pretty much where we are today, and that's pretty much where my life has been. God is very angry, very wroth. So again, God wishes that none should perish. God doesn't want people to be harmed. But your governments are harming people. Psychological warfare is the most criminal activity that government can engage in because it does cause physical harm, yet is highly undetectable at the basic layperson level. So again, that is occurring in Texas right now. Deep state governments and government people are operating along with the private sector cronies. That would be an explanation as to why your people are suffering. Unexplained mass attacks and stabbings and possession of the mind is what's occurring. So not only is God unable to protect you, the deep state is bringing that devil, that demon, that antichrist, that witch, that sorcerer, anti-power into your communities, and they don't control it. It even attacks their own family, and they lie to themselves. So again, the Senate rule is most likely unconstitutional. Lindsey Graham could say that in reality in the Senate proceeding where he might suggest removal of that rule. It is really one that could be contested in federal court, and an honest judge would say that it's causing a disruption in the impeachment process that the founders would not have allowed. And of course, we all realize that the impeachment process itself was flawed and a very dangerous exercise of totalitarian communism within our quote unquote supposed democratic government. Again, when we have deep state operations to include private intelligence corporations such as Kroll, Fusion GPS, Booz Allen Hamilton, Stanley Arkin Group, so on and so forth, as well as CIA contractors and CIA themselves, along with their buddies in NSA and every other agency that happens to be infiltrated with corruption. When we have them operating, the democratic process is gone because they will engage in psychological warfare to put their person in. That's what happened to the president and why the House was taken over by the Democrats. The deep state psychological warfare operators within government sent whatever messages and engaged in whatever spycraft theater they needed to have the Democrats take over the House. That's real. That's what happened. That was part of a coup. The Justice Department did not protect the vote. And that was part of what the people knew, that that vote would not be protected. The unprotecting. Remember, I called it the unprotecting. They act as though unprotecting is not criminal. They act as though unprotecting is because you deserve to be unprotected. The reality is move over, get out of the government, and let somebody get in there that will protect everyone equally. And then we shall be saved. So again, Lindsey Graham is on probably the right track, because even if this plays out and we don't have to contest that rule or get rid of that rule most likely needs to be contested in federal court if the Senate won't act on it. At least get a ruling from a judge. It appears that it's creating it more than appears. It created a logjam within the impeachment process that is not within the Constitution. There is constitutional basis to say the Senate has a right to a rule and to transfer its power to a certain degree as needed. However, when we look at how it's transferred and what the wording is within the Constitution, most likely the framers had no intention of the Senate's sole power of the trial being transferred over to the Speaker of the House. Because we're not going to say it's the entire House that wants that log jam to occur. We can't, we won't, and it would be ludicrous to say it. There are even Democrats that voted for the impeachment that had no idea that Pelosi was going to do that. So they're kind of stuck. They're stuck in a psychological warfare world. They have to do what they have to do to stay from being taken out, although living good lives within that psychological warfare world. That's the problem. Because, as I've said, they're going to hell. Just face it. They are the ones that God spoke about. They are those that are bringing about the end times. They could be the most pure looking and appearing and wonderful preacher. Again, the Bible is clear. The Bible is clear about operating in ways that causes people to fall, causes people to sin, that causes strife. So we all cause strife, we all sin, but we're not sitting around plotting and planning and using extremely high level of psychological technology and doctors to engage in it, to include psychological disability, to include physical disability, to include the inability to seek appropriate medical care as you would if you were in a less psychologically operated life. That also includes contacting doctors that I am sure are acting outside of their oath and are operating people to death within medicine today. Psychiatrists would not be the only ones that are operating outside their oath. Psychiatrists would not be the only ones inappropriately diagnosing, maliciously diagnosing, committing people to mental hospitals for political and propaganda reasoning. There's another word in there I can't get to. It is a sure thing that medical doctors have allowed people to die based upon an order of the deep state shadow government criminal enterprise. That includes federal, state, and local employees, as well as private sector cronies. If that's the game of life, then your game of life is demonic and is going to lead everyone in that game straight to hell. There is no way Jesus is going to protect a church that participates in deep state shadow government criminal enterprise psychological warfare. There's no way. There's no way. And of course, you'll point, well, look at how wonderful our lives are. Look how all this charity we're doing. You can't buy God's love with money. You can't buy God's love with fake charity. Paul was clear. Paul was clear. Somebody can engage in not one action of physical charity, however, have a charitable heart. And somebody else could engage in trillions of dollars of charity throughout their lifetime with some mega church or mega organization, yet have an evil heart that desires others to fall. And God would accept the one with the clean heart. The Bible is clear. The Bible is clear on all of what I've said and all of what I say. Well, again, that Senate rule appears to be flying in the face of the Constitution and is most likely unconstitutional and should be struck down as such. Well, praise God in all that you do. Praise God.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.